My daughter, Kayla, whom I had always indulged, was boasting about an extravagant Florida vacation that cost over $20,000, a trip she had booked using my credit cards without my permission. A smile was on my face, but inside, I felt a deep, simmering anger. So, I waited until they had left, and then I systematically cancelled every card, every reservation, and every order. They would be landing in Florida with no place to go, and I went to bed that night and slept like a baby. When I woke up, I had 15 missed calls on my phone, and that was just the beginning. The day before, as I sat in my office with a cup of coffee growing cold, Kayla's voice had come through the phone speaker with the sort of bubbly excitement I had cherished over the years, but something felt off. She described her presidential suite and its incredible wraparound balcony that overlooked a private beach. She was so excited, telling me I could literally see dolphins from the bedroom window. I told her it sounded amazing and asked her which resort they had chosen. She replied that they had chosen the Oceanfront Grand in Key Largo and told me it was absolutely perfect. She went on about a helicopter tour over the coral reefs and dinner reservations at a 5-star restaurant with a chef who had trained in Paris. I tapped my pen against my mahogany desk, remarking that Key Largo was a beautiful place and that I remembered her mentioning a desire to visit there. After a deliberate pause, I asked how much the trip was costing her and Ryan. She hesitated for a moment before saying they had saved up, mentioning Ryan's sales job bonus and the money she had set aside from her part-time boutique work. I straightened in my chair. I knew Ryan's job amounted to 3 hours a week at a car lot and that Kayla's work at the boutique barely covered her coffee habit. I told her that it was wonderful that the two of them had been so responsible with their finances. She said they really wanted to do something special for their anniversary. I had to point out that their anniversary wasn't until October. There was another, longer pause, and then she claimed to have meant the anniversary of the day they first met, which I knew was in February. "Dad, you're being so weird about this," she had said, asking if she couldn't just be excited about her vacation without getting the 3rd degree. The defensive edge in her voice felt like a cold wave washing over me. This was my daughter, the baby girl who used to curl up in my lap and ask for bedtime stories. But the woman on the phone was a stranger. I told her that of course she could be excited and that I was simply impressed by how much she had managed to save. I then began listing the expenses: a presidential suite, helicopter tours, 5-star dining, and a total that had to be close to $20,000. She insisted it wasn't that much and said I was making it sound like they were blowing their life savings. I reiterated that I was not criticizing her and was just proud that she was being financially responsible. She told me she needed to go pack because they were leaving for the airport in an hour. I told her to have a wonderful time and to send me pictures, and then she hung up. I stared at my phone, thinking about the 29 years I had spent as a father. I had learned to read her moods like weather patterns, from her nervous laugh when she mentioned Ryan's bonus to the way she had stumbled over the anniversary explanation. I set the phone down and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I typed in my bank's website. I entered my credentials, already certain about what I was going to find. The afternoon shadows lengthened across my office floor as I sat there staring at the screen. My little girl had used my cards to pay for a $20,000 vacation, the exact amount I had mentioned. 3 days later, I was still in my office with a cup of cold coffee next to me. The morning light was softer now, and I had been staring at bank statements for the better part of an hour. What had started as a routine financial review had become an entirely different experience. There it was, highlighted in yellow: American Airlines, $2,475. The date matched perfectly with Kayla's departure. Below that, Oceanfront Grand Resort, $12,450, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, $890, Blue Water Helicopter Tours, $1,200, Paradise Dining Experience, $750. I reached for my calculator, though I already knew the total, $18,137. It was close enough to my $20,000 estimate to make my chest tighten. Each charge appeared on my American Express statement: the card I had given Kayla for emergencies 3 years earlier, the card she had promised to use responsibly, the card whose statements I had stopped checking because I trusted her. My phone buzzed with a text from Kayla, telling me she was having the most amazing time and that the suite was incredible. I took a screenshot of the message, then called her number. It rang 4 times before she answered. I asked her how Florida was treating her. She said it was paradise and that they had just returned from the helicopter tour and were going to the restaurant she had told me about that night. She mentioned Ryan was taking pictures of everything. I told her it was wonderful and that I was so glad they were enjoying themselves. I clicked through to the next bank statement, noting additional charges I had missed. I then said, "Kayla, I need to ask you something." She responded by asking me what was up. "Are you using my credit card for this trip?" I asked, and the silence stretched for exactly 4 seconds. I counted them. She then asked me what I meant and said, "No, Dad, of course not. I told you we saved up for this." I asked if she was sure, because I was looking at my American Express statement and saw charges from her hotel, flights, and even the helicopter tour she had just mentioned. She said it was impossible and suggested someone must have stolen my card information. She said I should call the bank right away. Her voice had that same rehearsed quality I'd heard from business partners trying to cover up mistakes, smooth, concerned, and completely fabricated. I told her I was sure that was what had happened and that I would call them right now, thanking her for letting me know it wasn't her. She said that of course it wasn't and that I knew she would always ask for help if she needed anything. I told her I knew she would and that she should enjoy the rest of her trip. She told me she loved me, and I told her I loved her, too. I hung up and stared at the phone. She had lied to my face without a moment's hesitation, not just evaded or dodged the question. She had created an elaborate story about credit card theft and expressed genuine-sounding concern for my financial security. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The little girl who used to confess to breaking vases before I'd even noticed had just committed theft and lied about it with professional-level skill. I wondered when I had become such an easy mark in my own daughter's eyes. That evening, I found myself in my study, surrounded by photo albums I hadn't opened in years. The burgundy leather covers felt familiar under my fingers as I flipped through decades of family memories. There was a photo of Kayla at 5, grinning beside her first bicycle, a pink princess model that had cost me 2 weeks of salary at the time. She had seen it in the store window and declared it the most beautiful thing in the world. I had worked overtime for a month to afford it for her. I turned the page. There was another photo of Kayla, at 16, posing beside her first car, not the reliable Honda I had suggested, but the BMW convertible she had begged for. She had said that everyone at school had nice cars and that she would be so embarrassed. The car had cost $38,000, and she had totaled it 6 months later. Another page showed Kayla at her college graduation, her smile radiant in cap and gown. 4 years at Emory University, full tuition, room and board, $160,000. She had changed majors 3 times and graduated with a degree in art history that she had never used. I closed the album and reached for another. This one was smaller, less organized. It contained pictures of my other child, my son, Michael, though you wouldn't know it from the way he had been raised. Here he was at his high school graduation, working part-time at a grocery store to save money for community college. His car was a 15-year-old Honda Civic that he had bought with his own money and maintained himself. The contrast was stark. Michael had asked me for help exactly 3 times in his adult life. Once for a small loan when his car needed repairs, money he had repaid within 2 months. Once for help with a security deposit on his first apartment, money that was also repaid promptly. The 3rd time was last year, when he had asked if I could help with his wedding expenses. He hadn't demanded or assumed, he had just asked. And when I had offered to pay for the entire wedding, he had insisted on covering half himself. I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial records I had been compiling. The numbers were staggering. Kayla's college education cost $160,000, cars cost $73,000 over the years, apartment deposits and rent assistance were $34,000, and credit card payments I had made on her behalf totaled $28,000. The trust fund I had established for her 25th birthday, $50,000, had been blown through in 18 months. The total was $345,000, not including the countless smaller amounts for dinners, shopping trips, spa days, and vacations I had paid for without question. Michael's total was $8,500, every penny of which was repaid with interest. I pushed back from my desk and walked to the window. The neighborhood was quiet, streetlights casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. This house, this life I had built, it was all supposed to be for them, for my children, to give them opportunities one had never had. Instead, I had created a monster. The photo album still lay open on my desk, showing two paths diverging from the same starting point. One child had learned the value of hard work and self-reliance, the other had learned that Dad would always be there to clean up the mess. I closed the albums and stacked them neatly on the shelf. Tomorrow, Kayla would return from her stolen vacation, expecting everything to continue as it always had. She had probably already started planning her next financial request, but something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but it was crystallizing into something harder, more purposeful. My daughter needed to learn that actions have consequences, that stealing from family, or from anyone, was unacceptable, and I was going to be the one to teach her. The next evening, I settled into my living room with my laptop open and my phone within reach. Kayla's Instagram story showed her at the airport, radiant in the departure lounge lighting. She said they were finally airborne and on their way to Florida, hashtagged with the phrase, "Blessed Life." Her story showed pictures of their presidential suite and her caption, "Living my best life." I refreshed the page every few minutes, tracking her posts. I saw a picture of the airplane's interior, Ryan making ridiculous faces in the first-class seats, and a champagne toast to the best anniversary ever with a hashtag that made my jaw clench, "Daddy's Girl." At 11:47 p.m., her story updated with a blurry photo of lights below. Somewhere over the Atlantic, she wrote, adding that she couldn't wait to see their suite. I waited another 30 minutes, then opened my phone contacts and dialed the Oceanfront Grand Resort. A man named Marcus answered, and I explained that I needed to cancel a reservation for the presidential suite under the name, Kayla Foster, that was for the next day. Marcus was happy to help and asked for the confirmation number. I read it from my bank statement. I explained that the reservation had been made with my credit card without my authorization and that I needed to cancel it immediately. He said he understood but that the presidential suite had a strict 72-hour cancellation policy and that the full amount was non-refundable. I told him that was fine and to proceed with the cancellation. He confirmed that the reservation had been cancelled and that the card holder would receive a confirmation email within the next few minutes. Next, I called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. It was the same story, with the same professional courtesy. The luxury convertible that Kayla had reserved was no longer available. There would be a cancellation fee, and I understood and approved. Blue Water Helicopter Tours was next. The woman I spoke with told me they could only issue a partial refund since I was canceling within 24 hours of the scheduled tour, and that I would only receive about 40% back. I told her that was acceptable and to proceed. Each call was the same, polite explanations, professional understanding, and the systematic destruction of my daughter's elaborate vacation plans. The paradise dining experience, the private beach cabana rental, the deep-sea fishing charter. One by one, they all vanished from existence. My phone buzzed with confirmation emails, cancelled. 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 The final step was the most satisfying. I logged into my American Express account and navigated to the authorized user section. I found Kayla Foster and clicked to remove the user. The system asked if I was sure, and I clicked confirm with more satisfaction than I had felt in years. By 2:30 a.m., it was done. Every luxury service, every upgrade, every indulgence had been systematically cancelled. Kayla would land in Miami the next morning to find herself with nowhere to stay, no transportation, and no way to pay for alternatives. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat back in my chair. My phone was silent now, but I knew that would change very, very soon. I went to bed that night with a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Justice wasn't always swift, but when it came, it was thorough. My phone began buzzing at 6:23 a.m. The caller ID showed Kayla's number. I let it ring. It was just the beginning. I woke up naturally at 7:30, stretching in the morning sunlight that filtered through my bedroom curtains. The sleep had been deep and dreamless, the kind of rest that comes from a clear conscience and a job well done. My phone sat on the nightstand, its screen dark and peaceful. I padded to the kitchen, started the coffee maker, and opened the blinds to let in the full glory of the morning. Birds chirped in the oak tree outside my window, and the newspaper lay folded on my front step. It wasn't until I returned with the paper that I noticed my phone screen glowing with notifications. 15 missed calls, all from Kayla. The first had come in at 6:23 a.m., the most recent at 7:41 a.m., just a few minutes before. I poured my coffee and took a slow sip before picking up the phone. It immediately began ringing in my hand. I answered, saying, "Morning, sweetheart. You're up early." Her voice was cautious, probing. She asked me if I had been having trouble with my credit card yesterday. I said, "Trouble? No. Why do you ask?" She explained that when they had checked into the hotel, there seemed to be some kind of issue with the reservation system, and the front desk had said something about payment problems. I walked to my kitchen window and gazed out at my neighbor's garden. I told her that was strange because my card had been working fine. I then made a show of rustling around for my wallet, though I already knew exactly what I would find. I said, "Nope. Everything looks normal. Maybe I should test it to be sure." "Hold on." She told me that I didn't need to, but I insisted, saying it was concerning and that if there was fraud on my account, I needed to know immediately. I drove to the ATM 2 blocks away, taking my time. When I returned 15 minutes later, I called her back and told her that everything was good on my end and that maybe it was just a computer glitch at the hotel. There was silence, and then she said, "Yeah, maybe." I finished my coffee and scrambled some eggs, humming softly to myself. The phone rang again at 9:15. This time her voice was different, higher pitched and strained. "Dad, something's really wrong," she said. She told me the hotel had said their reservation was cancelled the night before and that someone had called and cancelled everything. I told her that was terrible and asked if they had said who had called. She said they had said it was the card holder, but that was impossible because they had paid for everything themselves. I set down my fork and leaned back in my chair. "Of course, I remember, Kayla," I said. "You told me you and Ryan had saved up for this trip." She insisted they had. I asked why the hotel would think the card holder had cancelled. She said it didn't make any sense and I told her I had no idea. She said they were staying at some terrible motel off the highway. "Dad, this place is disgusting," she said. She went on to say the air conditioning barely worked and that there were stains on the carpet that she didn't even want to think about. I made sympathetic noises while internally marveling at the efficiency of last night's work. Then her voice dropped to a whisper, and she said, "Dad. You didn't. You wouldn't have." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Nothing. Never mind." But I could hear the first seeds of suspicion taking root in her voice. She was starting to put the pieces together. She then said, "Actually, Dad, I need to ask you something directly." I told her, "Of course, sweetheart. Ask me anything." She asked me if I had cancelled their reservations. The question hung in the air between us like a sword waiting to fall. I set my coffee cup down slowly, considering my response. The time for games had passed. "Yes, I did," I said. The silence stretched for exactly 7 seconds. I counted them. "What? What do you mean, yes?" she asked. "I mean, yes, Kayla," I said. "I cancelled every reservation, every tour, every service you booked with my stolen credit card. Stolen? Dad, I didn't steal anything. I just borrowed, she replied. $18,137, I said, my voice remaining perfectly level. American Airlines, April 15th. Oceanfront Grand Resort, April 15th. Enterprise Rent-A-Car, April 16th. Should I continue? She told me I didn't understand and that it was just a temporary thing and that she was going to pay me back. I asked her with what money. I mentioned her part-time boutique job that paid $9 an hour and Ryan's 3-hour-a-week car lot position. We have savings, she said, but I told her, no, you don't. You have my money that you took without asking. That's called theft. Her breathing grew ragged as she said, fine. So I used your card. So what? You're my father. It's not like I'm some stranger. Being my daughter doesn't give you the right to steal from me, I replied. I wasn't stealing. God, you're being so dramatic. It's family money anyway, right? I mean, what's yours is mine eventually. So what's the big deal if I take some of it now? The casual entitlement in her voice hit me like a physical blow. I told her she was not entitled to anything I had earned. She asked me not to be like that and said, you've always helped me out before. This is just bigger. I asked her how much bigger it was. She said, what do you mean? I asked her if this wasn't the first time she had done this, and the silence told me everything I needed to know. I asked her again, Kayla, how much bigger? She said, maybe a few months. But, Dad, it was never anything big. Just when I needed help, and I knew you'd say yes anyway, if I asked. A few months. My hands began to shake with suppressed rage. I told her that instead of asking her father for help like a normal person, she had decided to steal from me for months. She said, I'm going to pay it all back. I asked her with what money, and she said she would get a better job and work overtime. You'll what? I said. You can't even hold down the part-time job you have now. That's not fair, she replied. Fair? I said, my voice rising. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been asking for help. Fair would have been respecting the man who raised you, fed you, clothed you, and paid for your entire existence for 29 years. You're being horrible, she said. I'm being honest, I replied. And clearly that's something you're not used to hearing. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a moment, then walked directly to my computer. If she had been stealing for a few months, I needed to know exactly how much damage we were talking about. I opened my American Express account and began scrolling backward through the statements. I checked February, then January, and then December. I saw a charge from a restaurant in New York called Leonard for $347, which I remembered her saying her friend had paid for. I saw a charge from Nordstrom for $892 in November, a shopping trip for job interview clothes that she said her savings had covered. Then there was the Four Seasons Atlanta for $445 in October, a spa weekend for her and her friends that had been such a great deal. In September, a charge from Louis Vuitton for $1,200 for a purse that she said was a gift from Ryan. The numbers climbed steadily as I went back further, with charges for restaurants, shopping, hotels, jewelry stores, and beauty treatments. All of them were charged to my card, and all of them were explained away with elaborate lies. I reached for my calculator and began adding everything up. The vacation was just the tip of the iceberg. The total unauthorized charges over 6 months came to $23,470, almost $24,000 stolen piece by piece while she looked me in the eye and lied. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My daughter hadn't just betrayed my trust, she had been systematically robbing me for half a year while pretending to be grateful for my support. The phone in my hand felt heavier than it should have. I needed air, space, and something other than bank statements and calculators and the growing realization that I had raised a criminal. I went to the living room and collapsed into my leather recliner, the same chair where I had read Kayla bedtime stories 20 years earlier. My phone was on the arm of the chair, and almost without thinking, I opened Instagram. The app loaded to a notification that Kayla had posted to her story. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped the notification, and the screen filled with a shaky video of what looked like a highway motel. I could hear Kayla's voice narrating over images of peeling wallpaper and a flickering bathroom light. She said, "So, this is where my father has forced me to stay on what was supposed to be my dream vacation." The camera panned across water stains on the ceiling. "Thanks to his controlling, manipulative behavior," she continued, "this is my reality now." I watched in growing horror as she continued the tour of the threadbare carpet, the broken air conditioning unit, and a view of a parking lot filled with semi-trucks. The video ended, but more story bubbles appeared. I tapped the next one, which showed a photo of her face with mascara-streaked eyes red from crying. The caption read, "When your own father sabotages your happiness because he can't stand to see you succeed. #toxic parents #financial abuse." I nearly dropped my phone. Another story bubble showed a long text post over a black background. "Growing up with a father who uses money to control every aspect of your life, who promises love but delivers conditions. Who can't bear to see his children independent or happy. #trauma talk #generational trauma #narcissistic parents." The comments were already pouring in. "Girl, cut him off completely. You deserve so much better than this. Toxic parents never change. Go no contact. Sue him for emotional damages." I kept scrolling, watching my daughter systematically destroy my reputation in real time. Story after story, each one painted me as an abusive, controlling monster who had ruined her life out of spite. The final story was a direct video message to the camera. "To everyone asking what happened, my father has always been like this," she said. "Growing up, he would promise things and then take them away if I didn't behave exactly how he wanted. Nothing was ever unconditional with him." She continued, "And now as an adult, he's still trying to control me by canceling my vacation that I worked so hard to afford." I thought about how she had worked so hard to afford it with my stolen money. She continued, "He can't stand that I'm independent now, that I don't need him anymore. So, he decided to punish me by calling my hotel and pretending there were problems with payment. He sabotaged everything out of pure malice." I thought about how the woman who had stolen nearly $24,000 from me was calling herself independent. She concluded by saying, "I'm sharing this because I know other people have parents like this, and I want you to know you're not alone. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally are the ones who hurt us the most." The video ended with her wiping away a tear and looking directly into the camera with wounded, brave eyes. I closed the app and set the phone down with shaking hands. In the span of 3 hours, my daughter had stolen from me, lied to me, publicly humiliated me, and painted herself as a victim of my abuse. She had turned a simple case of theft and consequences into a social media campaign designed to destroy my reputation and garner sympathy for herself. The comments were still coming in, hundreds of them now, from strangers who knew nothing about the situation except Kayla's version of events, strangers who were now convinced I was a monster. I looked around my living room at the family photos scattered across the mantelpiece: Kayla at her high school graduation, Kayla at her college graduation, Kayla's birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and family vacations. All of them paid for by the man she was now calling abusive on the internet, the same man who had just discovered she had been robbing him for 6 months. If Kayla wanted to portray me as the villain, she was about to learn what that actually looked like. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's office, Henderson and Associates. Rebecca, the assistant, answered, and I told her my name was Raymond Foster and that I needed to schedule an emergency appointment with Jim first thing the next morning. Rebecca asked me what it was regarding, and I looked at the photo on my mantelpiece, from Kayla's sweet 16 party, where she had hugged me and whispered that I was the best dad in the world. "Trust fund modifications," I said, "and will changes." The next morning, I sat in Jim Henderson's office at exactly 9 a.m. wearing my best business suit and carrying a leather portfolio filled with printed bank statements. Jim had been my attorney for 15 years, handling everything from business contracts to my divorce. He was one of the few people I trusted completely. Jim stood and shook my hand, his expression serious. He said that Rebecca had told him this was urgent and asked what he could do for me. I opened my portfolio and placed the bank statements on his mahogany desk. I told him I needed to modify a trust fund and make changes to my will. Jim settled back in his chair, his fingers steepled. He asked which trust we were talking about, and I told him it was the one I had established for Kayla's 30th birthday, a $200,000 trust currently set to vest next year. Jim said he remembered the trust and asked what kind of modifications I was considering. I slid the bank statements across the desk. I told him I wanted her removed as beneficiary entirely and for the money to go to Michael instead. Jim picked up the papers and scanned them quickly, his eyebrows rising as he took in the highlighted charges. He asked if they were all unauthorized. I said, every single one. 6 months of systematic theft culminating in an $18,000 vacation she took without my knowledge or permission. He asked if I had discussed it with her. I told him she had admitted to it yesterday, justified it by saying it was family money anyway, and then spent the evening destroying my reputation on social media. I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots of Kayla's Instagram stories. I told him she was painting me as an abusive parent for having the audacity to cancel the vacation she had purchased with my stolen money. Jim read through the posts, his expression growing more grim with each screenshot. He said that it was quite extensive and that she was really committed to this narrative. I replied that she was committed enough that I had decided she needed to learn about real consequences. I told him I wanted her completely removed from my will as well. Jim set down the phone and leaned forward. Raymond, I have to ask, he said. Are you certain about this? These are permanent changes we're talking about. Family relationships can heal, but legal documents are harder to undo. I said, she stole nearly $24,000 from me, Jim. Then she lied about it. Then she publicly accused me of abuse for stopping her from stealing more. At what point do I stop enabling her behavior and start protecting myself? He said he understood my anger, but I corrected him. This isn't anger. This is justice, I said. I pulled out another document from my portfolio. I've also compiled a list of previous loans and gifts over the past 5 years, I said. $345,000, Jim, not including her education. Jim whistled low. That's a significant amount. She's never paid back a single penny, I said. Never even offered to. And now I find out she's been stealing on top of all the money I've freely given her. I leaned back in my chair. She's made it clear that she sees me as nothing more than an ATM, so I'm removing her access to that ATM permanently. Jim was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents. He asked me about attempts at family mediation or family therapy. I told him, you can't mediate with someone who feels entitled to steal from you, and you certainly can't trust them with a $200,000 inheritance. I asked him what my son thought about all this. I told him, Michael doesn't know yet. I plan to call him this afternoon. I straightened in my chair. Michael has never asked me for anything he didn't desperately need, and he's always paid me back with interest. He deserves to benefit from my hard work, not the daughter who's been systematically robbing me. Jim nodded slowly. All right, he said, if you're certain this is what you want, I can draft the modifications. The trust fund change will require a 30-day waiting period and notification to all current beneficiaries. The will changes can be executed immediately. I asked him how long before everything took effect. He told me it would be 6 weeks for the trust modifications to be legally binding and that the will changes would be effective as soon as I signed them. I asked if she would be notified, and he said she would receive legal notice of the trust fund changes, as it was required by law. I smiled for the first time in days. Perfect, I said. I want her to know exactly what her choices have cost her. Jim began pulling forms from his filing cabinet. "I'll need you to initial several changes and provide updated beneficiary information for Michael," he said. "Are you prepared to do this today?" "I've been prepared since yesterday morning," I replied. 2 hours later, I walked out of Henderson and Associates with a thick folder of legal documents and a profound sense of satisfaction. Kayla's trust fund, the safety net I had created to help her start her adult life, was now designated for Michael, who had actually earned it through years of respect and responsibility. My will no longer contained her name anywhere. I sat in my car in the parking garage, holding the documents that would change everything. In 6 weeks, Kayla would receive a formal legal notice that she had been disinherited. She would learn that her choices had consequences that extended far beyond a cancelled vacation. She had wanted to be independent, and she was about to get her wish. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Michael's number. It was time to let him know that his integrity and character had finally been rewarded. The red light gave me time to dial. I sat in my car with the legal documents spread across the passenger seat, watching other drivers rush through their Wednesday afternoon routines. Michael answered on the second ring. He said, "Hey, Dad. What's up?" I said, "Hi, son. I have some important news to share with you. Are you somewhere you can talk?" He said, "Sure. I'm just finishing lunch at work. Is everything okay?" I pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine. "I need to tell you about some changes I've made to my will and to Kayla's trust fund," I said. There was silence. Then he said, "Dad, what's going on?" "Michael, I'm transferring Kayla's $200,000 trust fund to you, and I've removed her from my will entirely," I said. "What? Why would you?" "Dad, what happened?" He replied. I gathered the documents and walked into my house, settling into my office chair. "Kayla has been stealing from me for months," I said. "Nearly $24,000 in unauthorized charges on my credit card. That can't be right." "Kayla wouldn't," he said. "She admitted it," I replied. "Michael, I have all the documentation right here." I pulled up the bank statements on my computer. "Would you like me to go through the charges with you?" I asked. "Yes. I need to understand what you're saying," he replied. I read through the list methodically, the restaurants, the shopping sprees, the hotels, and the vacation, with each charge, its date, and its amount. Michael grew quieter with each item. When I finished, I told him that when I had confronted her about this, she had said it was family money anyway, and that she was just borrowing. I told him she had then spent yesterday posting on Instagram about what an abusive, controlling father I was. Michael was quiet for a long moment. He then asked, "Dad, when was the last time you talked to Kayla? I mean, really talked to her?" I said, "Before this week, probably 2 months ago, she called asking about refinancing her car loan." He said, "Yeah, we don't really talk anymore either. Not since she married Ryan." He paused. "She's changed a lot, Dad. She used to be different." "I know she was," I replied, "but people become who they choose to become, Michael. And she's chosen to become someone who steals from family and then plays the victim when there are consequences." He said, "This trust fund thing. Dad, I don't feel right about taking money that was meant for her." "Michael," I replied, "you've never asked me for anything you didn't absolutely need. You've paid back every penny I've ever loaned you with interest. You work 60 hours a week to support your family and still find time to help your neighbors." I leaned back in my chair. "Kayla works 15 hours a week and believes I owe her a luxury lifestyle. Which one of my children deserves to inherit the results of my hard work?" "When you put it like that," he said, "I'm not punishing Kayla out of spite. I'm rewarding you for being the man I raised you to be. There's a difference." He then asked what would happen now and if she knew about this yet. I told him, "She'll receive legal notification when she gets back from her stolen vacation. I expect that conversation will be unpleasant." "Dad, be careful, he said. Ryan's got a temper when he doesn't get his way. I'm not afraid of Ryan, I replied. I know you're not, he said. But maybe you should be prepared for them to react badly. I looked at the documents spread across my desk, legal proof that I had chosen character over blood, integrity over family obligation. They can react however they want, Michael, I said. But they can't steal from me anymore. And they can't manipulate me into enabling their behavior. He asked me if I was sure, really sure. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, I replied. We talked for another 10 minutes about practical details, about the legal timeline, and about his own family's reaction to the unexpected windfall. When we hung up, I sat in my office surrounded by the evidence of my daughter's betrayal and my son's worthiness. Tomorrow, I'd mail copies of the trust modification to Kayla. By the time she received them, there would be no turning back. But that was the point. 3 days later, I drove to Kayla's apartment complex and slipped a manila envelope into her mailbox. The documents inside would speak louder than any conversation we might have. Legal language had a way of cutting through manipulation and getting straight to the truth. I drove home and waited. The call came at 2:47 p.m. the following Tuesday. What the hell is this? Kayla's voice was shaking with rage before I had even said hello. I told her they were legal documents and that I assumed she had read them. She screamed, "You can't do this. You can't just steal my money." I asked her what she meant by her money. "Kayla, you just spent the last week vacationing on my stolen money, and now you're accusing me of theft." I asked. "That trust fund was mine. You promised it to me," she said. I replied, "I promised it to the daughter I thought I was raising. That person doesn't seem to exist anymore. Dad, you have to change this back. Please, you don't understand," she pleaded. "Ryan's already made plans for that money. We were going to buy a house, start a family. Plans made with stolen money tend to fall through," I said. The line went quiet except for muffled conversation in the background, with Ryan's voice getting louder. "We're coming over," Kayla said. "We need to talk about this face to face." "No, we don't," I replied. "Yes, we do. We'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. I sat in my living room and waited, but I didn't have to wait long. 17 minutes later, my front door shook under aggressive pounding. "Open up, Raymond." Ryan's voice carried through the wood. "We need to talk." I opened the door to find them both standing on my porch, with Kayla's face blotchy from crying and Ryan's hands clenched into fists. "This is insane." Ryan pushed past me into my living room. "You can't just take away money that isn't yours." "Ryan, this is my house," I replied. "You don't get to barge in here and make demands." He said, "That trust fund belongs to Kayla." "No, it belonged to the person I thought Kayla was," I said. It turns out I was mistaken about her character. Kayla collapsed onto my couch, the legal papers crumpled in her hands. "Dad, please. I'm sorry about the credit card thing. I'll pay you back." "With what money?" I asked. "I'll get a better job. I'll work more hours. I'll do whatever you want. What I want is a daughter who doesn't steal from me and then lie about it." Ryan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You're going to fix this, old man. You're going to call your lawyer and undo whatever you've pulled." "Or what?" I asked. "Or you're going to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong people." I pulled out my phone. "Are you threatening me in my own home, Ryan?" I asked. "I'm telling you how things are going to go. Mr. Foster." My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, appeared in my still open doorway. "Is everything all right?" I heard yelling. The presence of a witness transformed the room instantly. Ryan stepped back, his aggressive posture shifting to something more socially acceptable. Kayla wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Patterson," she said. "Just a family discussion that got a little heated." Mrs. Patterson looked between Ryan's red face and Kayla's tear-streaked appearance. "If you're sure," she said. "We were just leaving," Kayla replied, shooting me a look filled with pure venom. "Weren't we, Ryan?" Ryan stared at me for a long moment, his jaw working silently. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," I replied, keeping my voice level and calm. "And if you threaten me again, I'll call the police. Is that clear?" They left without another word, with Ryan's shoulder deliberately bumping mine as he passed. I watched through my window as they argued in their car before driving away. Mrs. Patterson lingered in my doorway. "Raymond, are you sure you're okay?" she asked. That young man seemed very angry. "Family problems, Eleanor," I said. "Nothing I can't handle. If you need anything," she said. "Thank you. I appreciate the concern." She left and I closed the door, turning the deadbolt for the first time in years. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Ryan had just threatened me in front of a witness. Kayla had demanded I reverse legal decisions made by attorneys and backed by months of evidence. They had both acted as if stealing $24,000 was a minor misunderstanding that could be fixed with apologies and promises. I walked to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, looking out at the quiet street where normal families lived normal lives. Somewhere out there, Kayla and Ryan were planning their next move, but I had already made mine. Eleanor lingered on my porch, her gray eyes filled with concern. "Are you certain everything's all right, Raymond?" That was quite a disturbance. "Just some family disagreements about financial matters," I said. "Nothing that can't be resolved through proper channels." She nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything. Harold and I are always home in the evenings." After she left, I found myself standing alone in my living room, the echo of raised voices still hanging in the air. The house felt larger somehow, more empty. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, doubt crept in around the edges. Had I been too harsh? Was there truth in Kayla's tears and her promises to change? She was still my daughter, still the little girl who used to make me Father's Day cards with crayon drawings of us holding hands. I spent the next 3 days in a strange kind of limbo, going through my usual routines while replaying the confrontation. The memory of Ryan's threat bothered me less than the image of Kayla's face when she had read the legal documents. Raw desperation, complete shock. Maybe I should have tried family counseling first. Maybe I should have given her a chance to pay me back before involving lawyers. On Friday morning, my doubts crystallized into action. I was reaching for my phone to call Jim Henderson about potentially reversing some of the legal changes when my doorbell rang. A young man in a courier uniform stood on my porch with a clipboard and an official-looking envelope. "Raymond Foster?" he asked. "That's me," I said. "Please sign here. You're being served with legal papers." I signed mechanically and took the envelope, my stomach dropping even before I opened it. Inside was a formal lawsuit filed by Kayla Foster against Raymond Foster, alleging psychological abuse, financial manipulation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I read through the document slowly, my disbelief growing with each paragraph. According to her complaint, I had systematically controlled and manipulated her through financial coercion. The trust fund she had never earned was described as promised compensation for years of emotional abuse. My cancellation of her stolen vacation was characterized as malicious sabotage designed to cause maximum psychological harm. She was asking for $250,000 in damages. The lawsuit painted a picture of me as a monster who had psychologically tormented my daughter for years using money as a weapon to maintain control over her life. Every boundary I had ever set, every consequence I had ever imposed was reframed as evidence of abuse. Reading her version of our relationship was like looking into a funhouse mirror where every normal parental interaction was twisted into something sinister. I set the papers down and walked to my filing cabinet, pulling out the folder I had compiled of bank statements, canceled checks, and financial records. 29 years of supporting her education, her lifestyle, and her mistakes. Hundreds of thousands of dollars freely given, with no strings attached. The contrast was stark. Here was documentation of generosity spanning decades, and there was her legal claim that I had been financially abusive. I called Jim Henderson. "Raymond, I was expecting your call," he said. "I assume you've been served." "How did you know?" I asked. "Because this is exactly what happens when entitled people face real consequences for the first time," he said, his voice calm and professional. "They attack. How are you holding up?" "Honestly," I said, I was starting to second-guess myself before this arrived. "Now I'm remembering why I made these changes in the first place." "Good," he said, "because this lawsuit is going to be easy to defend. You have documentation of voluntary financial support going back years, clear evidence of unauthorized use of your credit cards, and witness testimony about their threatening behavior." I asked him about her claims of psychological abuse. "Raymond," he replied, "setting boundaries with an adult child isn't abuse. Refusing to enable theft isn't manipulation. We'll present the facts and let them speak for themselves." We talked for another 20 minutes about legal strategy and timeline. When I hung up, I felt steadier, more certain of my course. I spread the lawsuit papers across my dining table next to my own documentation. The evidence was overwhelming. Every charge Kayla had made against my character was contradicted by decades of proof showing exactly the opposite. But as I organized my defense materials, something unexpected happened. Instead of the anger I had expected to feel, a strange sense of peace settled over me. My daughter had just proven in legal documents filed with the court system that she was exactly who I had thought she had become, someone who would lie, manipulate, and destroy family relationships rather than take responsibility for her choices. The doubt vanished. This lawsuit wasn't an attack on my character, it was a vindication of every decision I had made. I was still organizing documents when my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. The message was longer than my screen could display at once. "Dad, this is Kayla. I got a new number. I know you probably don't want to hear from me right now, but I need to tell you something important." I scrolled down, reading the rest of her message with growing surprise. "I dropped the lawsuit this morning. I'm not fighting you anymore. I've had a lot of time to think over the past 2 months. Ryan and I separated 3 weeks ago. He was the one pushing for the lawsuit. Said we could make you pay for disrespecting us. But sitting in that lawyer's office, listening to him talk about destroying you in court, I realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. I did steal from you. There's no other word for it. I took your trust and your money and then acted like you owed me even more. I convinced myself I deserved it because we're family. But that's not how family works, is it? You raised me better than this. I remember being proud of having a dad who worked so hard, who built something from nothing. Somewhere along the way, I started seeing your success as something I was entitled to instead of something I should try to earn myself. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm not asking for money or for you to change the trust fund back. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. Actions have consequences. Respect has to be earned. Family doesn't mean you get a free pass to hurt people. I'm getting my own apartment, working full-time at the boutique, and trying to figure out who I want to be without Ryan's influence or your safety net. It's scary, but maybe that's what I needed. I love you, Dad. I hope someday you can love me again, too, Kayla. I read the message 3 times, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. The tone was different from anything she had written to me in years. No demands, no justifications, no attempts to minimize her behavior. Could people really change this dramatically, or was this just a more sophisticated manipulation? I set my phone down and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the garden I had been neglecting since this whole ordeal began. The roses needed pruning. The lawn needed attention. Life had continued moving forward while I had been focused on legal battles and family betrayal. 2 months of silence. 2 months for both of us to process what had happened, to live with the consequences of our choices. Maybe that was what we had both needed. My phone sat on the counter, waiting for a response. I could text back immediately, begin the slow process of rebuilding trust. Or I could wait, let more time pass, see if this apparent change was genuine or temporary. I thought about the Michael I had raised, the son who never needed dramatic consequences because he had learned accountability early. I thought about the Kayla I had raised, the daughter who had somehow lost her way but might be finding it again. The afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across my kitchen floor. I picked up my phone and reread her message one more time, then set it back down without responding. Some things couldn't be rushed. Trust, once broken, required time and consistent action to rebuild. If Kayla was truly changing, she would understand that. If she wasn't, she would reveal herself by demanding immediate forgiveness. For now, the silence would continue, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom earned through experience. I had spent 29 years enabling her mistakes by making forgiveness too easy and consequences too soft. If she wanted a relationship with her father, she would have to prove she was worthy of one. Time would tell which daughter I would be dealing with, the one who stole from me or the one who had written this message. Until I knew for certain, the door would remain open, but the trust fund would stay exactly where it was.